What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Week 11 wide receiver trade targets. You guys know the drill. Buy low, sell high wide receivers today. Running backs tomorrow. We're looking for players with elite volume who've been getting unlucky with touchdowns recently. So we're going to start off by looking at the leaders in air yards over the last month. See if there are any differences in fantasy production. Guys who are getting a ton of volume, but they don't have that many fantasy points, likely because of the touchdowns. And a few names stand out when we do this, although I'll say I wish a few of their schedules were a little bit better. We're going to start off with Keenan Allen. Talked about him last week as well. Remains one of the top buy lows if you want to buy low on a wide receiver one. Even though they've been feeding their running backs lately, he still has 36 targets over the last month, which ranks third in the league, and 472 air yards, which ranks fifth. He just hasn't been able to translate that volume into fantasy production. We can sort of see why, though, if we look at who he's played. He starts off with at Titans 4 weeks ago, and they do a great job at limiting wide receiver production, I guess, unless they're playing Patrick Mahomes, because he went absolutely nuts on Sunday. But when they're playing basically anyone else, wide receiver production gets limited against the Titans, and especially at Titans. Then they play at Chicago in a game where he only played a limited amount of snaps. He still played a good amount, but he was limited on the number he played coming off of an injury. Then he plays Green Bay, and they won that game easily, so they didn't really need to throw the ball in the entire second half. Then he just misses out on a big game this week, going 8 for 68 on 11 targets, and he had a big play called back. I don't remember how many yards it was. I was watching the game. I had him in a league where I needed a win, and I see him catch I think it was 35, 40-yard reception. I was pumped. I think it was a penalty, but whatever it was, they called it back. I was pretty upset, but it's worth noting he did have a nice chunk play on the very next play. So it wasn't just add 40 yards to his production. He did have a nice game in the next play, but still 8 for 68 on 11 targets could have been a lot better. But like I've said in recent weeks, we've seen his ceiling. Remember to start the season how dominant he was, and he's still getting volume. It's still there. It's not like all of the volume has dried up once Melvin Gordon returned. He's still getting a ton of targets and a ton of air yards. So if you want to try to buy low on a wide receiver one, Allen is still your guy. The next guy to buy low on, if you don't want a wide receiver one, is John Brown. And he hasn't been doing bad, but he only has one touchdown in his last 8 weeks. And he hasn't been over 83 receiving yards in that stretch either. But he's fourth in air yards over the last month, and his schedule gets tougher to close the season. Now, a lot of people will look at that and say, well, that means trade him away, right? He's had an easy schedule. He's produced solidly, but he hasn't gone off. Now it gets more difficult, well, I'll trade him away. Well, I think the opposite is true. I think now is the time to buy. The Bills have 3 losses on the season. In those games, Brown has 11, 8, and 11 targets, with the 8-target game coming in week 8 against the Eagles. And if you remember that game, it was extremely windy. There were 30, 40 mile an hour winds, and you could see Josh Allen's throws were clearly being affected by that. So he gets all these targets in their losses, but then in the wins, he's only averaging 6.8 targets per game. The Bills have had such an easy schedule that they haven't needed to throw the ball as often as they would in more competitive games. But that's going to change in the coming weeks. He's similar to Keenan Allen. When you've got Keenan Allen on your roster, you don't want the Chargers to win by 20 because that means he's not being used down the stretch and he kind of needs the volume to pay off. Now, John Brown doesn't need the volume to pay off because he can have a really nice game on 4 targets because of how high upside some of his targets are, but you'd much prefer the Bills need to throw the ball late so that he can rack up 10, 11, 12 targets. The one thing I do want to point out is they play the Patriots on championship weekend. So if you're looking for a guy that's going to carry you in the playoffs and win you the championship, maybe not your best option, but I think he's a really good piece to get you there. And if you've got other guys who can play championship weekend, then I think he's still a great guy to trade for. Another player I'd buy low on is Chris Godwin. He's now been held scoreless in 4 straight games after scoring 6 touchdowns over the first 5 weeks. He was the wide receiver 1 after week 5, but he's the wide receiver 19 since then. The thing is, he's still getting elite volume. So if we look at since week 6, where he is the wide receiver 19, he still ranks 8th in targets even while having his bye over that stretch. Everyone watching this video knows how much I love Chris Godwin, love his talent, love his opportunity. So you know that I think whenever you have the chance to buy low on Chris Godwin, you got to do it. And when he's held scoreless in 4 consecutive games, ranking as a low-end wide receiver 2 since week 6, yeah, this is the time I'd try and get him. I'd also be trading for Allen Robinson, 2nd in targets, 6th in air yards, but 20th in fantasy points over the last month. He is the clear top receiver on the Bears, and when you look at how bad Trubisky's been, you'd think that his production's been really bad as well, but it really hasn't. 5 or more receptions and 60 or more receiving yards in 6 of his last 7 weeks, but he also has no touchdowns in his last 3 and hasn't scored in 7 of 9 games on the season. But he's getting that elite volume, and he's already had his bye, which is always a positive. And while his remaining schedule is roughly average at defending wide receivers, he's averaging over 22 half PPR points per game when his opponent scores more than 22 this season, compared to just 8.8 when his opponent scores 22 or fewer. Of his remaining opponents, only the Giants average fewer than 24 points per game, and he should dominate that matchup anyways. So the Bears are going to be playing teams that are going to put up points, and those are the matchups you want to target Allen Robinson, because when they have to catch up, they're really only looking to him. That's it for buy low. Let's move on to sell high this week, and we'll start things off with Jarvis Landry. Now, he's getting pretty elite volume, at least 10 targets per game in his last 3 weeks, with a touchdown in each of his last 2, even ranking as the wide receiver 10 over these last 3 games. The problem for him is it's not overly repeatable. You know, he could sustain this production, but it's more likely that his production falls off. The 33 targets in the last 3 weeks is great, but it's coming on just 60 air yards per game and just a 5.5 ADOT, which is super low, almost unheard of. A typical range you're going to find for a top 10 receiver is like 9 to 16. You know, you can still be elite on 9, still be elite on 16 if the volume kind of evens out there, with Michael Thomas being like the sole exception. But even he is at 7.7 on the season, just making up for it with, you know, Drew Brees being his quarterback. So basically all of these targets are caught. So while Jarvis Landry has been getting a ton of looks over this last month, these are really low upside looks, and it's not like he's a red zone threat, right? Like, you're not looking to Jarvis Landry every time you get close to the end zone. So we shouldn't really expect this touchdown production he's seen recently to continue. So I'd look to trade him away before this hot streak stops. Other than that, I don't see any glaring sell highs, and I don't want to just name players I don't think you should actually sell high on just to name players. It was a fairly predictable week for wide receiver production. Everyone that went off was expected to go off, maybe aside from Slayton, but realistically, you're not going to get anything trading for Slayton, and he might even be available on the waiver wire. If you can get something for him, then obviously go for it, but I don't think you'll be able to. Everything I said last week about Edelman is still true. Sanu is going to take targets. N'Keal Harry is going to take targets when he's finally activated. And while he'll still be a really good guy to own, I'd expect his production to take a slight hit down the stretch. But to be honest, that's really it for sell high. All the guys we usually talk about are hurt, and no one wants to trade for an injured player, so you're kind of stuck with them at this point. So, those are the top wide receiver trade targets for week 11. Remember, I can't go over every name in the buy low model, so if you want to see the complete list, you can do so at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. I'll go over running back trade targets next, followed by start sits on Friday, so be on the lookout for both of those. But that's the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? And if you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? But thanks for watching.